Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm B.
And I'm Zach.
And this week, we read the last chapter of The Last Olympian, Chapter 23, We Say Goodbye, sort of.
Isn't that like such a poetic way to end your book series? Even like our podcast.
Yeah, and it's also a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I guess, which is also on brand for Rick Riordan. Yeah, they do say goodbye, but, you know, there's no permanent goodbyes here.
Well, there's never a permanent goodbye because no matter what you do, there'll always be a sequel, especially now with like movies or books. You have to keep them so open-ended. Like,
yeah, it's like, oh, this is over, but, you know, if you give me more money, maybe it's not.
Yeah, well, that is an example here. It's like he pretty much left it open-ended for enough to even, he pretty much has like Annabeth go, I wonder if this will be future demigods problems, as she like looks fully into the camera.
Yeah, exactly. They mention that because of Percy's deal with the gods, there's just been a real onslaught of new demigods already, and that they're like even having a hard time keeping up with it, and that camp went on an extra 2 weeks longer than it normally did. So like now they're sort of like looking at this like new era of Camp Half-Blood. They've finished this prophecy. A lot has happened. A lot has changed. And, you know, they're building more cabins for new campers from different gods that we haven't even met before. There's like this new prophecy that they don't even really know the timeline of. Rachel, who's their oracle, is going off to some boarding school.
She's going to New Hampshire.
Yeah, there's a lot of like weird stuff that like leaves a lot of like all of this, the main story is kind of wrapped up, but we're looking forward to like, okay, what's going to happen now at Camp Half-Blood? How are things going to change now that there's going to be new campers that are claimed? You know, even the Hermes cabin is much more empty now because there aren't all these like unclaimed campers shoved in there.
Yeah, and like how I'm looking at this chapter is like as an ending chapter for a lot of books. Like, is this a good chapter? Does it leave like there isn't like what I'm excited about this book series and how it ends? It isn't like a big type of like. Little did they know, on the opposite side of the camp on the hill, Luke had returned with like an eye patch or something. It isn't anything like that, which for me, I like when they have stuff like that where it's it has like a nice finality to it. There are a lot of book series that I love, like that have had trilogies or whatever. Like a good example of this is Mistborn. The way that book series ends made me tear up. There's a lot of book series where actually. See, there's a good example of that is like Mistborn, but then I get to like Cirque du Freak where I get really upset about the ending of it. Not because the ending was bad.
Isn't that the Everything Was a Dream ending?
No, this is where he goes back in time and prevents the whole book series from happening, thus null and voiding everything.
Oh, so it's sort of, it might as well everything be a dream. It's like it just makes everything null and void. I think I remember you saying that.
Yeah, and I'm saving people, like, if you liked it or not, I'm sorry, but I'm saving you. Like, there are some book endings that are so bad that it just upsets you, and this is one where I love.
Right, you don't want them to cancel out all the work we've done into getting here, because I think, like you said, yeah, they're not, like, showing that Luke is back, or even that Kronos is already back or something, because there has been hinting like that could eventually happen, but I feel like that'd be a real cheap shot, and it kind of like robs you of the satisfaction that at least like we've gotten this specific thing done. Yes, there's something to look forward to, and there's like obviously big changes on the horizon for Camp Half-Blood. There's things that could happen with these new demigods. Obviously, like we're not all like neatly wrapped up happily ever after, like living in sort of like boring bliss or whatever, but that's even, you know, what Annabeth and Percy say in that conversation where Annabeth is like, oh, I was hoping we could have a little bit of peace and quiet, and Percy says, well, would it be Camp Half-Blood if we had peace and quiet? So it's kind of like that's the perpetual existence of this camp.
So what I like to say about endings, when it comes to endings, they need to carry some weight to them, but also all the, like you said before, all the events and everything that has taken place prior to the ending of the book needs to matter. That's why reason why I don't like Rise of Skywalker or the new sequel trilogy is it takes all the weight from the original trilogy and pretty much, none of that's important. Darth Vader sacrificing himself, man, that's dumb.
Yeah, it just deflates the entire narrative and ruins like the importance of it, I guess. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
What's the point of like following a story for like 6 or 7 hours, or in our case 2 years, and pretty much by the end of it,
2 years.
You know, it's like the equivalent of like they make out and all of a sudden Ethan's there with a rifle and shoots Annabeth and she dies in Percy's arms, and then the book just ends.
Like what you say. Yeah, no, exactly. It's like they're not. I think that this last chapter really walks that balance between like things aren't so neatly wrapped up that you feel like, okay, well now everything's back to normal and there's absolutely like no danger on the horizon. There are definitely like tons of possibilities as far as where you can go from here. And like you said, people like to leave things open ended, especially this day and age, to like, just have options as far as sequels or spin-offs or that kind of thing. But it's exactly like you still get like the satisfaction of knowing that like what we've dealt with here in this book series is mostly taken care of. There's obviously ramifications of what has happened, but we're not just gonna like retread everything. We're not gonna go back to the same villains and everything like that, because that's kind of boring, to be honest.
So what I'll say about that is like when it comes to like open-endedness, there's a good way of doing it, which is Percy Jackson does a really good way of doing it, where it's like they propose the question of like, we have the 7 demigods have to do this whole new prophecy. Like, is it us? Is it going to be in a couple of years? They keep it open-ended in that way. There are many examples where like open-endedness doesn't quite work, where you have like this finality. Thus, when an author decides to make like another sequel, cough, cough, cursed child, you don't know what to do with it. Like you have a problem. But it's like fundamentally, it's like, well, you've wrapped everything up. There's no villain, so all you can do is go back in time.
You've painted yourself into a corner, right? Like if you make things too wrapped up, then
when it comes to like Rick Riordan, what I love about this ending in particular is that it doesn't mirror the beginning of the book, but it mirrors like all the curses of Percy Jackson. They're kind of like lifted, like everyone in Hermes' cabin's kind of like dispensing and getting into their own cabin. And also, Percy Jackson's going to high school for the 2nd year in a row. This is the first time he's gone to a school for 2 years.
Right, that's true. There's a lot of things that have been resolved. It's not just even within the realm of like magical stuff that Percy has had to deal with. Now his like personal life is totally different. He has this supportive stepdad, obviously in the first book we dispense of Gabe, and like he has like this possibility of living a normal life, and I do think that that's a very important aspect of his character arc, because he does decide, oh, I want to stay a human. I don't want to be immortal. I don't want to just live as a god. I want to, do both. I want to be a demigod, and I also want to be a kid and a student and a friend and whatever.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you with that. I think also when it comes to like Percy's character arc is that he's obviously grown as a character, but also it goes from, hey, I didn't want to be a half-blood to now I love being a half-blood, and this is the first time I don't have to worry about looking back and making sure that there's nothing against me, like a monster or even Camp Half-Blood. I'm looking forward to my own personal life.
Right. Oh yeah, the ending is really important, right? Because his like the very last line he says is, "For once I didn't look back." He's looking forward instead of looking back.
Yeah, because it's like you look at it from like a teenage perspective. Like when we were in high school, like we were so afraid about like SATs and getting into a college, and then you get to college and you're just like, I kind of miss high school a little bit because it was so much easier in some ways and some other ways. And then when you're an adult, you're just like, man, high school or something was so much easier. But as an adult now, you have to look forward. And after a couple of years, like, how did I even go to high school? Like, how quaint was that? Like, there's a lot of. It's interesting that you look at this. You look at this through like a YA lens, where you have, Percy Jackson has done all this stuff, and now he can finally kind of rest in the sense of like he's gonna look forward to high school, possibly college. He has a girlfriend. He has all of his friends there. He's done the betterment of everyone. Like, you got to give the guy a couple decades of rest before he goes on another adventure.
I'm fascinated to know what the new prophecy entails, right? So okay, is it a spoiler for you to tell me where this prophecy comes into play? Am I going to read anything where I'm going to find out what this prophecy is?
Probably not. That's what I'm going to say about that. Like, all I'll say about it is that the reason why I'm looking at this, and while Rick Riordan was writing this book, he was probably already having inklings of the ideas that he wanted to have in his next series with Heroes of Olympus, not right. Even with Kane Chronicles. There's a lot of things. Like, I'm not going to say anything about that, but again, when I'm looking at this, you have to remember Rick Riordan was a mystery writer before he wrote Percy Jackson. So he was kind of already putting in these little clues. Like, obviously, he wrote it in this way where he could have something like that was, like, if you're going to make a great prophecy, it has to make sense in the grand scheme of either the next series or when you're going to use it. Unless, like, you're writing while you're going on, like, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
So what you're saying, okay, so that really didn't. I'm not exactly sure if that answered my question, though. It's like, this prophecy refers to a set number of demigods. Now I forget how many it is. What is it, 7 or something? Am I going to find out in any of the, let's say, because I think we've decided on the next series that we're doing, which is Heroes of Olympus. In Heroes of Olympus, does this prophecy come into play, or is it like a different prophecy?
It's the same prophecy, yeah.
Okay, it's the same prophecy. That's what I thought. I wasn't sure if it was a different.
Well, that's like, why would you have a new book series if you didn't have the same prophecy?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, I know. I wasn't sure if it was like a different type of spinoff because there are a couple other series he's done.
But I might just give you a spoiler for Heroes of Olympus. It takes place 1,000 years in the future. And they have hover cards. No, I'm joking.
No. Okay. I see. I totally believed you there because, like, I was like, I don't know. It could, like, I have no idea what time period it is.
I'm not going to tell you when it is or where it is.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll just find out.
What I'll say about Heroes of Olympus that's not really a spoiler is that it takes the idea of Percy Jackson in a way of it makes it better. And what I mean by that is there's now multiple characters rather than just a singular character.
Right. Yeah. It's like a what's the word? Like an ensemble cast.
It's an ensemble cast. There's a multiple perspectives. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about that book series. Like, when it comes to Percy Jackson as a singular book series, like, you can understand now, like, reading Percy Jackson very slowly, why having multiple characters is so much easier to get information across than just Percy Jackson went to sleep
one
and got a dream.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's benefits and drawbacks to each. I think it has been really interesting to have this complicated narrator where it's like, okay, do we ever really get clarified on? I guess we don't because this is like the last chapter and I don't know if there's any other materials that would explain this, but like Percy's telling this story, right? He's the narrator, and I guess we've always had a little bit of a hard time pinpointing what point in time he's telling this story from, and he's sort of like limited in his knowledge to like both what he knew at the time and sort of what he would eventually come to know, but I never am quite sure how far in the future he is or where he's coming from with that.
So what I'll say about this is that it's maybe a future thing, or maybe it was something that Rick Riordan possibly just started off like the good hook of the book was like, hey, I didn't want to be a demigod, and if you are, you're in great trouble.
Right.
To kind of getting rid of that a little bit and going more towards this like in the head of a kid where things go which way and what and the kitchen sink.
Right, but do you know what I'm saying? There's certain things in the narration.
No, and I get that. I'm not going to tell you, and I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong about this. There's some questions that are better left unanswered currently.
Okay, right, because it's fascinating because like it's not, we're not reading, say, something like The Hobbit where like there's the frame narrative is like baked into the story where they're like, and then I finished writing this or whatever. Like we don't exactly know when he's saying all this.
I think a good example of this, which we're kind of talking about as well, is in the Kingkiller Chronicles, it is both a third-person story and a first-person story. The first-person story elements is the person telling a story, while the third-person elements are when he's not telling a story and it's just day-to-day life. And it's kind of hard because when it comes to like those writing styles here, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it possibly might come back into play in some way, shape, or form, but I don't know how I can tell you other than spoilers.
Yeah. Okay. Oh well, that makes me kind of intrigued because that kind of just came back to me as like we finish up this book series, and it was my question. I think when we first started reading this, right? I think that was maybe one of my first questions in the very beginning, like when we read Lightning Thief, the very first chapter, and I was like, wait a second, okay, so Percy has already lived through this. Where is he now? And I guess it's really hard to determine that without maybe spoiling. Even if I had found out early on, like, oh, this is just him a few days after the events of what happened, or this is him years later, it's like, oh, well, then that, I guess, confirms that he lives or whatever, which I guess you expect a protagonist to live, but not always.
My theory about like the beginning of the book is more if that's just the hook that Rick Riordan wanted to use, but then kind of diverted away from it, because never once in the entire series does Chiron or someone say, hey, you should write a book about this for other demigods. Like, you never have that even in the first book. Like, you should keep a journal or something.
Yeah.
Like, even like that's just like, so maybe possibly, but that's the hard thing. Even like throughout the journey, It's funny that we look at it from that frame narrative, because we look at a whole book series, and the entire book series is insane, the amount of like dangerous things Percy Jackson does. but he keeps telling everyone you shouldn't be a demigod, but look how cool it is.
Right, it's sort of both. It's like is an advertisement for it and also a warning. It really depends on the kind of person you are. Like we do end every episode with keep staying mortal, and like I have always multiple times on the show said that I would never want to be a demigod. But I think it's like if you're a kid and you're like looking for that sort of adventure, I think that's like certainly a child mindset to be like, oh, I'm bored, I don't have agency, I want to like have the freedom to, you know, be this like cool sword wielding hero.
So what I'll say about that, B, is kind of like when it comes to like YA or kids books, it's not the word that I would probably use, but not going to use in the situation. It's like a power fantasy, but also kids want to feel powerful. They all want to have superpowers. I remember as a kid when Dragon Ball Z was so big, like we would all pretend to, you know, be Super Saiyans and like beat the crap out of each other in the playground. Like that's just what you do as a kid. Like you want to shoot laser beams, you want to use a sword. And when it comes to as an adult, it's like a good example. Oh my God, I'm about to use Name of the Wind again. There's a quote from Patrick Rothfuss. It's like, you know, when we're kids, we don't have to worry about the future. We lose our childhood when we start worrying about ourselves. I'm completely butchering that line right now, but it's something along the lines of the second you start worrying about like, oh man, if I fall off this cliff, I'll die, rather than I'm going to do a cannonball.
That's kind of an interesting like duality of the half-blood. That's like they don't live a long time, and part of that is because they're always being pursued by danger, but also part of that is like they have that weird specific mindset of a child where you kind of don't really believe in your own mortality.
You're the person that runs into the burning building as a kid rather than a person being like, that's a fire department's job.
Right.
And that's what I like about Percy Jackson. Like, when it comes to this whole book series, the reason why I love Percy Jackson and the Olympians is you have, like, this interesting twist on Greek mythology, but also you have this interesting twist on kids and how they deal with their powers, because it isn't just like, yippee, I get to have all these powers. It's more like I have all these powers, but also, you know, what does Spider-Man say? With great power comes great responsibility.
Right. It's like, well, you better watch out, kid. You got all these powers, which, I mean, that's maybe the theme of this whole series, right? It's like, I didn't want to be a half-blood. It's like all this sort of baggage that comes with these powers. It's like, oh, you have sort of like this ability to take control of your life, but maybe you don't. And I kind of really like that metaphor in general. When it comes to like this story for kids, it's like at first you think, oh, this is like an escape from like the typical lack of agency that children have, but then ultimately you find out that they still don't have agency. They're still at the whims of like this, you know, fate and prophecy and the system that they didn't have any like stake or control in. And I guess it's in some ways like goes to show like, oh, no matter what, when you're a kid, you kind of don't really have a say of where you're going to end up. But ultimately it's kind of satisfying to see this last chapter and go, oh, wait, they like did end up changing some of those things, and he made the world a little bit better for half-bloods after him.
Well, the way that I look at it, and I'm looking at this from both the first chapter, which I reread in preparation for this episode, and the last chapter, is that it goes away. The
series, you mean?
Yes, the first chapter of The Lightning Thief, and going to this last one, because you should, in theory, you should be able to read this whole thing as a complete story prior to any of like the spin-off series or whatever it is, or sequel series or whatever. You should be able to like look at this as its own thing. And the one thing that I noticed a lot of like what kind of changed the most is the message about like disability, like it's all superpowers, to at the end you can live a normal life, have a girlfriend, go to high school. You still have those things, but you're special in this way where it is now a part of you rather than a hindrance. Like that is like the main thesis and why Rick Riordan wrote Percy Jackson, was to help his dyslexic son. And you know what the funny thing, or not the funny thing is, you know what the great thing about his son is now?
What?
He's going to school. I think he's going to get he's majoring in literary, like not literary, I'm about to say literary science, like a person holding test tubes. Like he's about to get like a PhD pretty much. And like what he wants to do is like English.
Wow. I mean, if that doesn't represent something in the scheme of things, like he literally made this for his son and then now he's like interested in reading. I mean, who's to say that's just like also him, you know, being his dad? I imagine having Rick Riordan as a dad would maybe lead you down that kind of path.
Well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in that sense, quote unquote. And, you know, what I love about Percy Jackson, what kind of drew me when I first read it as a kid, and I'm sure the reason why my grandma picked it up, was as you're learning a lot about Greek mythology, you're also learning a lot about how to interact with people. Because that's something that Percy Jackson has to struggle with every day. Like when he has to interact with the Hunters of Artemis and how they're all pretty much hate men. He has to deal with like Annabeth and like her weird hang-ups. He has to deal with Nico being an emo kid. Like there's a lot of like how does a quote unquote, because Percy Jackson is supposed to be our normal kid in the situation, like he knew nothing and now he knows everything in the sense of like he literally can't be killed right now. Like he still has he still has the mark of Achilles.
Right, I keep forgetting that. Like you sort of feel like it's irrelevant or something after, they disposed of Kronos, and
No, he
especially
still
because
has
like they broke the whole curse with Luke and he was killed, so like his weakness was found, but obviously Percy still has that for, I guess, as long as he lives.
So here's the issue with that though, is like if Percy Jackson were to ever come back again, he's now pretty much a god. It's the exact same issue they have in the Matrix where Neo becomes a god, but then in Matrix Reloaded, they have to say all the agents have upgrades, so Neo is not super powerful anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, it sort of works for Percy though, because he still has that weakness. So like was still hanging over his head through the entirety of like the end of this book series.
Yeah, but also it's like, where do you take a character that can literally not be destroyed unless he gets backstabbed?
I'm not sure.
That's the hard, tricky thing, and
yeah, I'm fascinated to know like if we ever see him again, because I know that Heroes of Olympus doesn't focus on him specifically, but like, do you see him around camp or something as like this other demigod who's like been through it? Like, I'm kind of fascinated to see how he's incorporated into the lore, because he started as this like sort of like awkward, weird kid who, as his existence, being one of the big three was like kind of controversial, and now he's like this hero.
Here's the thing, that they even talk about it specifically in this when Percy meets Poseidon, he's like, maybe I should claim my other sons and daughters, winky face.
Right, that was very funny, honestly. Yeah, so we haven't really gotten into too many specifics from this chapter, but it's sort of just like a wrap up.
There isn't really much to talk about. That's the problem, is like it's all pretty much, if I wanted to say it in like a breath, it's pretty much like Percy Jackson, like 2 weeks have gone by. Actually, the whole summer's gone by with an extra 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And everyone's saying their goodbyes, and this is the last day of camp, which for me is so fitting to have it as the last day of camp, where every time we've had the last day of camp, Percy Jackson has either almost died, Thalia got resurrected. The last day of camp, I think, for Battle of Labyrinth was the funeral.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of, like, bad
it
things
has all
that
sorts
happen.
of weird tone shifts. Like, you have no idea what's going to happen. In this case, yeah, it's sort of like a wrap up. He does see his dad briefly, who's like fishing in the Long Island Sound, and you hear kind of stuff you already know, which is that he thanks Percy for telling him to come, and that all the gods were apparently very grateful for Poseidon's help, and even Ares, I think, writes him
he sends him a thank you
letter
card
or whatever, which I think is very funny.
With some bonbons, pretty much.
Yeah, he does say sort of like a weird, vague phrase to Percy when he leaves. He said, I'll see you soon, Percy, and remember, know which fish are big enough to land, eh? And it's like, what does that mean? I guess pick your battles, but it's like, who knows?
Well, you gotta remember, Poseidon knows a lot more than he thinks he does, or that Percy thinks he does, so who knows?
Right.
Maybe, you know how weird it would be if this is picked up the next day and the Great Prophecy has just started?
I know. I keep thinking about the timeline of everything, because they don't know. They're like, okay, maybe this will happen soon, and then that kind of disappointed Annabeth. Like I said, she was looking forward to maybe a little bit of a calmer lull before the new prophecy. But who knows? Like next summer, they said there's a bunch of demigods on the horizon. They like literally opened up camp to more people because of this deal that Percy made with all the gods, who said, "Oh, we'll claim our godly children." So instead of all these sort of like unclaimed demigods wandering around America who like don't even know where they belong, now they're being sought out by all these seekers that Grover is training.
Well, here's also the other thing. They also talk about people being claimed in other countries, too.
Right, I heard that too. Yeah, so like that made me think like, oh wait, so when they get claimed in other countries, do they go back to America?
Yeah, they get their visas, and they
Yeah, that might be really complicated as far as traveling and stuff go. Like, wouldn't that be wild if like a bunch of like demigods like couldn't get into America?
But you gotta remember the most important thing. Mount Olympus is the Empire State Building. I'm pretty sure it's easy to get them there.
That's true. And then again, there's who knows, they might be flown over on Pegasuses or something, Pegasi.
Possibly. Who knows? Or maybe they teleport, or There has to be a contingency plan because remember, Percy Jackson did make them all promise in the River Styx that have to claim them.
I keep thinking of like, imagine like a kid gets his Hogwarts letter and then like a seeker shows up and is like, oh, but you're oh, okay, well, you gotta make a decision. I guess.
Oh man, that's like he goes to both of them. Technically, wait, B, technically
You could, right? Because it's the summer.
You could, because it's summer. It's a summer camp, but you could do both.
Wow, that's a busy child. That's what happens when a god like falls in love with a witch.
That is so busy. Like he'd be so burnt out, but maybe they'll have like a celestial bronze wand, or they'll have like, yes, Pegasus horn.
Definitely exists as a fanfic for sure, because it really slots into place very nicely, like the similarities and the differences.
You could easily do both of them, and Harry Potter turned out to be a demigod, and was also a son of Poseidon, and also started dating Annabeth. Right?
Because half-blood in Harry Potter means you're like Hermione, like, right?
No, you're mudblood. You're
like a mudblood, or like that's like the slur for it or whatever. And then in this lore, it means you're a demigod. So like
you're a demigod, yeah.
What does that? If you're half-blood plus half-blood, does that then cancel out and make
you're
you
a full-blood? Oh man, you start having to wear red, you have to be part of the Bloods?
I guess technically you would be a half-blood, though, inherently, because if you were half witch and half something else, then you would be half-blood.
So you would be a full-blood at that point.
No, you just be half-blood of two different... The two halves can't fit together. They're two halves of two different things.
That's like in Mistborn, how there's like people are born with superpowers. If they get them all, they're called a Mistborn. If you have two powers, you're called a Twinborn. And the joke is, if you have all the powers, doesn't matter if you're Mistborn, you're just called a Fullborn, and everyone hates that.
I don't know. I'd be fascinated. I bet there's tons of writing about that. I don't.
No, there's plenty of writing about it. Trust me.
Like, there's a lot of overlap there. Thinking about like the broader lore of Percy Jackson is interesting.
I'm sure there's a fanfic with Hercules from Disney's Hercules and Percy Jackson. It's gotta all exist.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, for sure. Megara would really be buds with Annabeth, don't you think?
Oh God. I'm gonna jump out a window real quick.
Yeah, just the sarcasm alone would kill people on the spot.
Well, I would love it if it was Danny DeVito and
Danny DeVito hanging out with Dionysus.
Yeah, it'd be like a buddy cop. Oh, I'd love it.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is Danny DeVito would probably play Dionysus, so he'd be playing against himself.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Exactly. It would be like in Matilda, where he's both the narrator and also Mr. Wormwood.
Yes. And that kind of like wraps up kind of like what is left for Percy Jackson. I think what Percy Jackson does really well is it opens up this world to both Americana and also Greek mythology, but also much like America and Greek mythology will always live on in some way, shape, or form, which I like about Percy Jackson. And how even though with this ending, even though it's supposed to be sad, see you next summer is the mentality.
It's not too sad, right? Because like that's the name of the chapter as we say goodbye, sort of. And it's like, okay, so like let's account for all of the characters, right? Percy going back to school for a second year in a row at the same place for the first time ever in his life. That's kind of awesome. That's very important to him too, because he kind of gets to live somewhat of a normal life. Rachel is still the Oracle, but she's like sort of going halvesies and like going to this boarding school for half the year, which is like, that's kind of bizarre that she's like afraid that during math class she's gonna like burst out with a prophecy or something.
Yeah, and then you have Annabeth, who I think Annabeth has the most interesting one because again, we've seen her in a lot of the books. Like she goes to like San Francisco, but now she's able to like live in New York City because she needs to be close to Mount Olympus, but also towards Percy. So they're gonna have a very healthy relationship that isn't long distance.
Right. And she's like lucky in a lot of ways, like as far as character endings go, because she gets kind of a lot of responsibility, but it's not even like a very scary responsibility like what Rachel has. Like she literally gets her dream, which is to like be this sort of architect of all these important things. Like not only does she get to help rebuild Olympus, but now she's rebuilding the camp too. She's like overseeing this whole process of building these different cabins. Exactly, yeah.
I mean, she deserves kind of a big reward because seeing how she made Luke kill himself in that capacity, she deserves a little
she's
gimme.
been through it, that girl.
Yeah, and what I like about her as well is like, we take this character that's fundamentally broken in many different ways. She has been abused, she has been traumatized, and at the end, she's looking forward to the future, and much like Percy, they're going to be looking to the future rather than the past now.
Right. Yeah, and I really like that. In some ways, they make a really good team because because of Percy's sort of really selfless and thoughtful like wish, I guess, towards the gods. You know, instead of taking immortality, he decided to change everybody else's lives for the better. And as a result of that, like he lays the foundation for Annabeth to do this rebuilding. Like because of him, they're inviting all these new demigods in, and then Annabeth is able to be helpful, like actually on the ground and in camp, like, you know, drawing up the blueprints, being like, oh, we need to put this other cabin here, talking to Chiron, being like, oh, we need to even expand to more cabins. They make like kind of like a nice team of like building this better future of Camp Half Blood together.
Yeah, and it's also like, what is greatness? I feel like that's something that people don't really talk about much. Is like, what makes someone great? Is it they do something economically amazing? Is it something they do something warlike? Is it something that you do? You know, you like you save 1,000 puppies from a burning building. I think greatness depends on your definition should be how it impacts the future rather than the past.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's like a very nice ending for her, and I guess I don't know. Is that really? And then yeah, and Grover too gets a ton of responsibility. He goes from sort of like this hapless seeker who isn't even really very good at his job and is very insecure about what happened to Talia and what happened to, you know, Percy's mom. Like he's, you know, messed up a few times in his time as a seeker, and then he comes back after meeting Pan and everyone thinks he's a heretic, and now he's like, you know, like head of the council, like all of like the seekers respect him so much that they kind of fear him. He goes from like this goofy comedic relief into like this like really amazing authority role, and then even Juniper says he should run for president, you know?
Yeah, and they never broke up their empathy link, so if Grover dies, Percy Jackson's a vegetable.
Yeah, we never really totally acknowledge the empathy link again, but I guess it's still there. They're best buds.
Yeah, that's just an open-ended question. Like, if Percy accidentally slips on a banana peel and dies, Grover also dies.
No, but he can't though, because he has the
Yeah, he can be. What are you talking about? He slips on the banana peel and
then he lands on his back.
Yeah, he lands on his back funny, like on a piece of Lego or something.
Right, and then the Lego kills him and
he gets bodied.
Grover.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay, here's a question. If something were to happen to Grover, would Percy die?
I mean, that wouldn't that make more sense? Be where you have something like if Grover gets killed, like even like something that's impenetrable. The armor only works one way; it doesn't work from inside. It only works outside.
So do you think he would still die even though he had the Curse of Achilles?
So if your brain gets turned to a vegetable from internally by magical means, I don't think your body's going to be able to survive that. Because it's not a physical blow; it's a mental blow or spiritual blow.
I don't know. I don't know what magic is more powerful, I guess.
The magic that Rick Riordan thinks is more important.
Right, that's true. I'm just like fascinated to know like what would happen. Like if Grover died, say, would like Percy still stay alive, but would he have like a weird curse put upon him?
Or would he just be a vegetable? Like he would actually turn into like a potato.
Oh, maybe that might be what it is. He might be still alive, but he'd be like in like a weird comatose
That's possible too, yeah.
Oh, that's dark. That's really dark.
And you know what? No one can help him because like they try to like put like a needle inside of him and like it just breaks. They try to like, you know, draw blood. Can't do that.
Oh my god, so he's just sealed in there. All right, this is very dark. We're just like really going through the hypotheticals here. I guess we've sort of, you know, talked about all the updates of all the different campers. It's mostly a pretty happy ending. There's some stuff to like ponder about. It's not super great that Rachel has to go to this boarding school. She's not thrilled about it. Honestly, she gets probably the worst ending. You know, she has a lot of responsibility, like pretty much her whole life, whether she's going to this school that she didn't really want to go to, or she's like at camp, which makes her happy because she gets to be near her friends and like live this like life that she feels drawn to, but also it's like a very scary responsibility. So I think as far as all the main characters go, believe it or not, the mortal character has the most to deal with in the end.
Well, yes, but also a lot of what she's doing is based off of her own choices. You know, every choice has a consequence.
Right, exactly. She can handle it, I think, for sure. She's one of the most strong-willed, I think, of the characters.
She's also the one that had to go back to New York, not because of Percy, but because this was her destiny. And there's a lot of like it's a little hard to like talk about because we were looking at it through the lens of like the love triangle, but now that we're out of it, like the reason why she had to go to New York wasn't because of Percy. Yes, to give him the message that he wasn't the hero promised, but also to become the new Oracle. And you know, that's kind of the sad thing, isn't it? It's like the trope is actually it's almost like a subversion of the trope of like, you know, that her dad doesn't say, you know what, you were right about this, and he rips up the boarding school pass or whatever.
Right, no, she still has to do that. There was actually stakes to her making that promise. She has to go. Oh, I just realized something totally wild. Is that in Heroes of Olympus, Rachel has to be the Oracle. So, like, we're probably gonna see Rachel a little bit again, right? Because she's like the Oracle for a while now.
Well, she's the Oracle bee, but also the Oracle can pass down from people to people.
Yeah,
Like, once they're dead, the spirit
Right.
goes somewhere else.
yeah, that's true. So I don't really know what time period the Heroes of Olympus takes place. So it's like, is she like gonna be like an old woman or something?
Well, what I will tell you, B, is that they do reference the Nintendo Wii.
That answers nothing, but thank you.
That's all I'm going to tell you. They have a reference to the Nintendo Wii.
Does that have anything to do with Rachel, or are you just being silly?
No, I'm being serious, and I'm not telling you anything about Rachel. I'm telling you when this is taking place. That is all I'm going to give you.
Okay, then I see what you're saying. The reference, hold on, when did that come out? When I was in high school, I want to say?
No, that was like 2006, 2007.
2007, I was in high school.
Oh, I forgot you're older than me.
Yeah, I'm older than you.
Like, wait, that makes no
2007,
sense.
I was a freshman.
Okay, because I was like starting middle school. So I'm like, wait a second, that makes no sense. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Now it does.
Yeah, I know I look like a leprechaun, but I am in fact 26.
Oh, yeah. Woo. Getting up there in eternal years.
I
You're
know.
almost like in your teens in elf years.
I'm like gonna be 27 in September, so like it's weird. It doesn't sound real, but anyway, it's fine.
No, you're not like the child in The Mandalorian. Once you're 50, you're still technically a baby.
Yeah, it's gonna be funny when I like suddenly have facial hair and people will be like, "Wow, it took them a little while to look older, but now they finally look 20," and I'll be like 30.
Hey guys, what's up?
Yeah, I just age very, very, very slowly.
No, it's gonna be like, look, it's a baby with a beard.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna look like Boss Baby.
Yeah. Oh God, no. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things possibly coming up. So like I said, everyone, the votes are in. Heroes of Olympus won by a very big landslide.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay because we'll probably do Kane Chronicles after Heroes of Olympus. So that will be in like many, many years. So we'll kind of talk about really quickly what we're going to be doing with that because we will not be doing it chapter by chapter.
Right.
We're going to be doing it by perspective because I think each perspective is 3 chapters long or 4 chapters long. And you know what we're going to have to do, B? Because this is the sad thing about Heroes of Olympus.
Yeah.
There's no more funny titles.
There aren't. They're just chapter 1.
So you have to come up with a funny title now, B.
Oh, geez, really? Wait, for all of the chapters we read or just like for the section?
No,
we
just
read?
for the section. That's
Okay.
going to be the name of the episode. Like, it has to be like the fundamental thing.
Oh, that's fun. That gives me more homework to do, but it'll be a fun project. I think we've finally earned it in
Sorry, B, that I have to give you more work. I'm sorry that Rick Riordan had a slave after the first series and decided, you know what,
Yeah.
no more funny titles anymore.
Yeah, he just sort of gave up on that. All right, so we got to do it ourselves. That's exciting. Yeah,
Yes.
so we've determined Heroes Olympus. It was a very high margin of people who wanted to read. I couldn't believe how many people voted in that poll. It was like
Everyone wanted Heroes of Olympus.
I thought it would be maybe like a few dozen people, but it was like 109 people voted in that poll.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a rig election either. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, so like about 70% of you or something want us to read that. So that's what we're doing.
Like 73% of people
Yeah.
out of the 22 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
which is fine. And we respect everyone's opinion. And we're going to be reading Heroes of Olympus next, which for me, I'll flat out say this, B. I have read Heroes of Olympus once, but I cannot remember it. So this is going to be as much as a new read to you.
Oh, this is going to be fascinating. Yeah, we're really also like buckling in for a while now because these books are a little longer, right?
They're a little longer, yes, but also you have to keep in mind, B, these books came out when I was in high school, and around junior year was when one of the House of Hades came out, and then the last one that came out. So I didn't quite read them when they were being released because I was getting ready for college and stuff. So, yippee!
You're busy being an academic.
Yeah, I was busy getting my degree in technical theater, and now my theoretical degree in literary studies, I guess, at this point. I should get like an honorary degree.
It's true, yeah. Once we've been doing this for 4 years, I'll feel like I have a degree. I mean, I've been, yeah, I'm pretty, close to podcasting for 4 years, right? Or more than that, right? Because I started in 2016.
Yeah, well, I've been doing it just about as much as you guys have since
Yeah.
2016.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's crazy, but it's got to get done. That's the good thing about Percy Jackson and our podcast. It will keep going around and round and round. Ooh. It's crazy to think that we finished a book series. It took us 2 years, even with all the craziness that has been happening in the world. Like, just thinking back to like our first episode, I remember I was sitting in my old room. I had like a box for a recording studio. What I mean by that is I literally made a box, put foam in it, and now I have my own recording booth. I have so many friends. And it's a lot like the weird type of thing. Like, we started our show as like, I kind of talked about this on Twitter a little bit. I thought that was interesting. Is we started the show off just for funsies, and now we're like 2 years into our show. We have over 10,000 plus downloads each month.
That's so crazy.
And the crazy thing though is like nothing's really changed. Like a lot has changed, but nothing's really changed at the same time.
A lot has changed in our lives, I guess, in some ways, but as far as like how we do the show, it's been pretty similar. Yeah, it's been pretty consistently the same. Like, I know that Robert mentioned on the meme page something about how we don't always, in the beginning, apparently we didn't say it was like some sort of phrase that we didn't end it with or something. Like, did we not begin with Good Morning Campers, or like not
No, we
end
did.
with, did we not end with Keep Staying Mortal? Was that it? It was like some sort of difference
Possible. I don't.
in like
see, there's like the little hang up
the
things
little
like
sign
that.
off things, but like for the most part our format has been very similar, which is weird. It's weird to think that we have even been doing this for this long, because I still think of this as my new podcast, even though I've been doing it for as long as I did for Unfortunate Associates, sort of. I guess we like stretched things out longer, but like, I mean, it's like the same amount of recording that I've been doing.
Yeah, and there's nothing that's really been different though, because it's like when it comes to our show, it's like for me, it's like almost like a factory at this point. Like we get the episode done, I know exactly where to put the edits, and we're good to go. It's like when it comes to our show, it's a lot easier to finish editing, but also at the same time, it's more fun to get like when you get emails popping up and you get people interacting with you, because it's like, oh man, people are listening to us, but at the same time, we'd probably still do the show if it was just the two of us, because it just gives us something to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, literally, when you have the 2 times you visited, it does sort of just end up feeling like an episode of Radio Camp Half Blood, because we just end up talking about media and stuff anyway.
Like, we should just record when we're randomly talking about dumb stuff. Like, there's like times where I remember like when I came to you, which hopefully eventually you'll come to me and I'll make you guacamole. That, you know, we just had like weird random conversations on the train, and your sister would just look at us. It was like, this doesn't
I
sound
remember
right. Like,
the first time you visited, where you and I were like, we were literally riffing on some movie or TV show. I don't remember what movie it was. It must have been some sort of Halloween movie, because you were here both times in October. And Sarah and Taryn were like in the kitchen in the other room making cookies, and they could hear us just talking, and they're like, I feel like I'm just listening to an episode of Radio Camp Half Blood, because like the acoustics just carried our voices.
if I am remembering my dumb brain, I think I know exactly what we were watching. I think we were watching some Gilmore Girls episode, because I don't know why we were watching
Really?
Gilmore Girls.
I
Yes, because it
definitely
was
watched Gilmore Girls while you were there, but I don't know if we were watching that. I think we were watching
No, we were watching Gilmore Girls because I was asking you dumb questions about who the characters were.
I did do that. Yeah, that was something, because it could have just as easily been a Halloween thing, though.
No, because there was the part oh my god, I remember the exact conversation that we had. I was really confused why there's a coffee shop and a hardware store.
Oh no, do you know what it could have been though? It could have been Season of the Witch, though. We also
You're
watched
right.
that.
No, because I'm thinking of like the hardware. I'm getting it confused because there's
Yeah.
a hardware store in there where they sell the masks.
Yes, we watched both at some point in that visit, but yeah.
No, because I remember specifically asking you because I was really confused about why is there a coffee shop and a hardware store. Like I remember asking you that question wholeheartedly, and you're like, just cause it's whimsical.
It's true.
Yeah, it's crazy the adventures that we've had. It's crazy all the people that we've met, and we love you all so much. I remember getting nearly in a fist fight in New York. I remember like going to see The Lightning Thief. That was so much fun. All the interviews that we had. I think, you know, obviously seeing like Camp Half-Blood Brooklyn, me being able to go there, going to the Getty, going to places that kind of like got me out of my comfort zone, or just staying inside. Like it's interesting that Percy Jackson's like kind of opened up this weird world for me. And it's also with when it comes to us is like interacting with people. Every day we're interact with people that are like, I'm 11 years old. And I'm like, oh, good God. I don't remember what I was like at 11 years old. I hope we would have been friends or something.
Yeah. It's very strange. It's cool when we get messages from people who are like kids now, and it's like, I don't know, are you listening to this with your parents? You're like, people message us, they're like, oh, I listen to you like when I'm, doing homework and stuff. It's like I haven't even done homework for college in like several years
What
now.
the heck is homework? My homework is me doing projects.
Yeah, it's very strange that you guys are out there and you're listening to us ramble about this story, but we did it. We finished the series and we're on to the next one, and who knows how long we're gonna keep doing this.
We're going to be taking a 2-week break. We didn't stop to end the show. We're just taking a vacation. I think we've deserved it after 2+ years. I think we only missed
Only a few, yeah.
3 episodes. We've only missed 3 episodes, and that was only because of technical difficulties, and one of them was just New York stuff.
Yeah, or sometimes our audio got messed up or something, but for the most part,
No, that's like the crazy thing. We've always been super consistent with our show, which is the most shocking thing I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, you're pretty consistent as far as a co-host, which helps keep me consistent because I'm sometimes bad at time management, but you get there for me.
Well, no, that's just how my brain works. It's just like, well, I haven't recorded today. Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's crazy. We're getting there, and eventually we'll finish Heroes of Olympus, and by then maybe Rick Riordan will be a brain in the jar and just keep pumping out books.
Yeah, he'll just be a robot, like in a mech. He'll be in a mech suit of just like a jar, a brain jar, just piloting a robot. Like, who knows?
On a typewriter?
How long we're going to keep doing this podcast, but what I do know is that it's really given me a strong appreciation for the series. I had no idea how I would feel about it going into it. I honestly wasn't super drawn into the first book. Like, I thought it was good enough, and I wasn't even really a Harry Potter fan, so it reminded me of Harry Potter and a lot of the similar trappings, especially that first book. And I was like, this is a nice enough read. I didn't love it, and I didn't feel as connected to the characters as I do right now, but definitely in maybe, I want to say, even this last book especially gave us a lot of depth as far as the characters and what they want and what they believe and the kind of people that they are. And I think that also has to do with the sort of style of writing where you write YA and towards the later books they get more serious and heavy and complicated and for maybe an older audience. So that's probably why I liked this book so much as compared to the others in the series. But yeah, I only feel more of a connection to the story than I did when I first started reading it, and gradually, each successive sequel, I had different feelings about the characters in this story and how it was written. But I think this last one, I particularly found myself going oh wow, I really feel a connection and a stake in these characters. I care what happens to them. I feel like I know them.
Yeah, B, I totally agree with what you're saying. I have that feeling too. It's it's weird. Okay, here's something I'm gonna talk about maybe for a couple of seconds or so. Is that when it comes to a lot of pieces of media, people get so attached to people. You look at them as friends rather than characters in a book, because that is the ultimate goal of an author, isn't it? To make your characters as real as possible. When it comes to movies like Back to the Future or Star Wars, the original trilogy, it's you look at them as friends rather than characters on the screen. Yes, you have Mark Hamill, you have Carrie Fisher, R.I.P., you have Harrison Ford, but at the end of the day, you look at them as Han Solo, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker. You look at Back to the Future as Marty McFly, you look at Doc Brown, you want to be friends with them. You want to be as close as possible. When it comes to Percy Jackson, they are so real as kids. You believe them. You would love to hang out with them. That's kind of the reason why I think so many people grew attached to Annabeth, or grew attached to Percy, or grew attached to Nico, is because they are the same age as them, and they pretty much have the same type of thoughts and feelings. That's something we have to think about. Is a lot of kids are going through the very similar things Percy, Nico, Annabeth, Bianca, Thalia. I could just name everybody, and you'll always find something that's super relatable. I think that's also why people grew so attached to Harry Potter, because when it comes to our generation, the Harry Potter generation, we grew up when those books were being published.
We were that same age.
Yeah, and you would grow up every book would come out pretty much a year or two apart, so you'd be growing up with Harry. And there's a weird thing that people always forget about, when a new Harry Potter book came out, it was it was an event. It wasn't just, oh, the next book came out, because it's the weird thing now is people can just binge read books, but there's a lot of books now I read now, and I'm so excited to read the next series. Like, I'm reading the Stormlight Archive again. I consider those people as friends. Each book comes out 2 years apart from each other, and I love that because I get to revisit my friends and see these cool people. And it's the same thing with our show, isn't it? It's like every week people get to see us. Like, yes, we are friendly with each other, and people see us as friends, and we would like to be friends with you guys. But also, at the same time, we're almost like, what's the best word to put it? Like, we're almost like characters in a book. Like, we're both characters.
Yeah. It's also weird, like you said, the age difference, too. Sometimes I feel like we're counselors at Camp Half-Blood, and all of, like, our listeners are, like, the younger campers.
Yeah, that's probably you know what? That's probably the better word. Like, I feel like we're counselors more than, like, friends.
Yeah, I truly can't believe we've been doing this for this long. I mean, we've been doing it for over 2 years now, because our 2 years was as of February, so it's like 2 years and 2 months or something.
Yeah, we did 122
like,
chapters. 120.
So many episodes, you guys, not to mention the bonus episodes. I can't even, like, believe that I've done anything this consistently this long. I don't think I have in my whole life.
Well, you have, and that's the really dumb thing we've done in our life, isn't it? We have all these Percy Jackson episodes and stayed consistent. And we just want to thank every single one of you guys for doing all that stuff.
Yeah, we absolutely appreciate that you guys are listening out there, because, like, I don't know, like Zach said, we probably would keep doing it if there was, like, only, like, 5 people out there, but it's, like, it's nice to know that people who care about these books, who had, like, a real stake in, like, how we would discuss these books, actually enjoy what we have to say or care about, you know, our dumb jokes about ponies and whatever else, like horsing around. I don't know. Just like it's great that there are actually people out there who enjoy listening to that.
All we do is we shoot the cow manure, and that's all we do. And that's what I love about everything about this. And we just wanted to say from the bottom of our hearts, thank you guys so much for listening to our show.
Yeah. The show couldn't exist without you guys.
No, it probably would, because there's so many other Percy Jackson podcasts now, but...
That's true. It's just our show, though, the way that we exist.
Yeah, well... Oh no, if you stop listening, we'll just disappear.
Yeah, we're like Tinkerbell.
Clap, everyone. Clap or B dies.
Yeah.
Please don't clap right now. Oh, man.
So yeah, that's it. We did it, you guys. Not only did we do it, but you guys, you listened.
We did it.
You listened through the whole thing. That, in some ways, that takes way more patience, is to listen to this instead of recording it.
See, here's the funny thing is, I'm interested to see what people's favorite jokes are. I'm interested to see, like, what was, like, the weirdest rants both of us have had? I mean, besides the sandwich rant, which we'll never hear.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would love to know, like, what you guys have thought about this show, like, in the past 2 years. Like, has it, you know?
Here's the number one dumb question, B. Are you ready for this? I want people to answer.
Yeah.
Did people think we'd actually be able to finish the whole series?
Right, especially going at this glacial pace. Like, did you think we were going to lose our minds before that happened?
Yeah, I'm actually curious, because there's a lot of podcasts that say they do these huge, like, Herculean tasks, and they never follow through. Well, we've done it.
Yeah.
Rick Riordan, if you're listening, we completed a project probably longer than it took to write The Lightning Thief, or maybe one of these books.
I know, and it also, in some ways, is sort of embarrassing. It's like, oh, you finished a handful of books.
Congratulations.
In over 2 years. Good job. They were written for children.
Hey, there was no pictures in them, and I had to pull up my thesaurus and my dictionary. Man, Rick Riordan, come on our show now, please. We'd love it. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Maybe, I don't know. What is he doing during the quarantine? Maybe we could figure out something.
Good point. Well, he's probably writing right now. He probably has like 16 books already finished.
True. Yeah. Maybe shoot him an email. Maybe he's not as busy as normal.
www.whatsrickriordansemail.com, smiley face, winky face.
Yeah.
All I'll do for my professional email is, my dearest Riordan, will you come on our show? Winky face emoji.
Yeah.
And then he just sends back thumbs up 100%.
I don't know if that would be as effective as just like enlisting all of the children who listen to this podcast to at him and be like, hey, you should go on this podcast, or would he hate us?
Oh, we're not saying that you should do that, because that is considered spam.
I can't tell if that would be like the worst thing ever, though, and he would be so mad.
But I'm saying, like, we're not going to tell you not to do it at the exact same time, because that would be really bad to do. I'm just some guy here. If you want to do something under your own free volition, we are not responding to this or condoning it.
Yeah.
All I'll say, you know what I'll probably put in that email if we ever do it? Dear Rick Riordan, we won't talk about the movies. We just want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
About anything, about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We won't talk about anything Disney Plus related. We just want to have a conversation and just sit down and kind of just talk about Percy Jackson and like what it took to write the series, but also at the same time what you liked about it. What would you have done things differently? There's a lot of like we're gonna ask it from a as if we're getting lunch rather than please tell us what your favorite ship is. Like we'd like to have a conversation. That's all. That is our open letter to you, Rick. If you're out there, Well, B, where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. You can follow our show on Twitter at halfblood_radio. If you want to buy any stickers of us or our faces, just go to TeePublic and just type in Radio Camp Half-Blood. We have a Patreon /Radio Camp Half-Blood, so just look there, possibly get some good goodies. And thank you guys so much again from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, B, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya.
Bye, guys.